Now.
Well, shit just got real.
Okay,
so I guess I will start off with, hi everybody, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Timbrien organized this and then wrangled me over the last couple months to come here and talk. It's going to be a more open talk, and I'm pretty sure nobody needs to be reminded of Zoom etiquette. Please mute your mic if you're not talking. We're going to go over a little bit of my journey through fighting, and then why that spurred on me doing video analysis. And then the goal at the end is giving away as much knowledge as I can, so everybody can take a tool and start watching video, because it's actually one of the coolest things that we have in the fighting community now to better what we do, whether it's rapier, heavy, equestrian. We can learn so much, and all of us carry pocket recorders these days. And so we can get video footage of what we're doing so we can then get better. And so realistically, that's what we're gonna probably hyper focus on this evening. Also in that, at the end of this, we will open up to a Q&A. I will hang out. I'm happy to answer questions. We will ask for people to submit questions via the chat method. That way we don't have a bunch of people unmuting their mics all at once and causing epic Zoom chaos. And so, life goals, organization. And so Thorin will be helping manage all those questions as they come in. I will try to hit as many as possible, but please forgive me if I don't get to your question. You're welcome to message me on Facebook and we can chat anytime. So with that, is anybody got anything before we get going? Timbrien, I'm here as your guest and I totally just ran over the top of you. I'm sorry. You're muted.
Okay, there we go. No, this is really perfect to have you. We've been trying to get together for a while. We spoke together on a panel for the West about just diversity and inclusion and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love her. And, there's just a myriad of reasons why we can't get to practice. We're deployed, we're breastfeeding, we're injured, like whatever it is, we all have it. And your way of progressing and just pulling all the levers you can, and whether you are healthy or there or not, is really admirable. And you just have a fascinating story and a lot of just real wisdom. And I'm just really honored that you can be with us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And then somebody's got to have the clicker counter for how many times I dropped the F-bomb, because I'm going to try not to, and it's just going to degrade as it goes, just to warn you. Also, please excuse the interruptions. I have two shepherds that are very needy, so they may show up in the video at some point or not. So I guess with that, what we'll do is I will roll into a little bit of my background. So hi, I'm Helga. I'm from the West. I am a heavy fighter. I have been fighting off and on in the society since I was 16 years old. Cough, cough, legally. I started fighting really at 15 and a half because I had a fake ID. But bygones be bygones, we're going from there. Through my time in the SCA, I have suffered some catastrophic injuries. I have broken my neck twice, I've broken my back twice, and I have destroyed my shoulders. Anywhere from car wrecks to equestrian wrecks to just a bad dice roll in life. And well, I don't bounce that well, apparently. Tuck and roll, not in my character sheet. But one of the things that I've tried to use is using those wrecks to either better my fighting or become more physically aware of myself as I recovered. Also, I talk about these stories because many fighters in their arc of whatever their path is are going to experience an injury. And statistically, athletes do not, like professional level athletes, do not actually recover and go back to their sport from a major injury because we do not mentally and emotionally prepare ourselves for not being as good as we once were. And the truth of the matter is, every time we go through something in our body, whether it be injury, whether it be pregnancy, whether it be a large weight change, we don't know our body, and we must relearn it. And to relearn our body, we must sacrifice ego, because you are gonna suck, and that has to be okay. Michelle, mute yourself. I can hear your background. Thank you. And so we are going to have to relearn our body, and to relearn our body takes a level of patience with ourselves and forgiveness. When I started fighting, I was 185 pounds. I was wrestling at 15% body fat, and I guarantee you I could hit as hard as a 6'6" dude. And that wasn't using mechanics. I was just that built. And I am no longer that built, and I will never be that built again, because I physically cannot generate that much muscle mass anymore. I'm older. And it's just the truth of things. And I would really love to have my 18-year-old body back. Not gonna happen. And so this is the thing of, we must adapt, and we must give ourselves the grace to adapt. And so to give you guys the most catastrophic injury, I absolutely understand what it sounds like to be drawn and quartered. The worst wreck of my life, I had 2 horses go opposite directions with me, and I had no way of escaping what occurred. And I ripped out my right shoulder completely. I destroyed the rotator cuff and most of the joint. I ripped out pectoral muscles, and we're not even talking about what still is in existence in my left shoulder. And in the process, I've had 4 different surgeons tell me I would never fight again. I've had 1 surgeon tell me I would never touch my face again. Can do. And it took a lot of getting over my own ego to learn how to use my body again. Because I was injured right before I was supposed to ship off to basic at 18 and go be a Marine. And so it literally ended my world. Like, life plan out the window. Since then, I have undergone 5 surgeries on that arm to be able to function again. The first one at 18, the next one in my the next series of events was in my mid-20s. With every time people just being like, you're not there yet. My physical therapist, and I will never, I will call them physical terrorists to the day I die, because I have never wanted to tap out so bad in my life. But I will tell you that if you have an injury, having a crew to help maintain your body is actually one of the biggest things. I see my physical therapist once a month, whether I need it or not. We have structure. Like, she'll look at me and be like, you're dropping muscle mass. It's time to go lift again. Like, if you want to keep doing this, and she's one of my reminders, and she's one of my cheerleaders, and she's why I'm here today. I cannot be more grateful for that woman. Because when I failed in my fight, when I finally said the surgeons are right and I can't do this anymore, she grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and she's like, oh no, you are not done yet. We got plans. Go pick up the bar. And I'll tell you that if you're coming back from an injury, if you don't have a medical cheerleader, you should have a friend that's a cheerleader. And you should have a friend that understands that occasionally you're going to have to tell them, I can't do that. But they will just show up the next day and be like, can you do it today? Like, cool, great. Let's go find that 5% you can do. So any questions about that, like, weird background of mine? All right. So with that, I kind of lost in this process the best fighting years of, like, what we consider. So I lost my mid to upper 20s. I could not physically fight. And so in there, I learned so much more about fighting because of those injuries and because of trying to come back. But I also made the conscious decision that if I couldn't fight, I still wanted to give back to the community. Because if you've seen anything else I've talked about, the SCA kind of like saved my little redneck self. Instead of being a very wild child, it gave me a place to learn about myself. And so I always feel that I owe the society a little bit of a debt, and I owe the next generation a debt because the society paid it forward to me, and so I'm trying to pay it forward to the next generation. And so when I got told I couldn't ever fight again, and when I would probably never see the field, I became obsessively determined to replace our trainers and replace the people that could teach the next generation. However, I'm a millennial, and I believe in using technology to better this weird medieval thing that we do, because we can and we should. And so I was very lucky that I was given a teacher that does video breakdown. Duke Sean and I, man, you ever want to learn how to video breakdown? That dude will not stop talking to you about it. Like, guaranteed. You put a quarter in Sean, you're gonna get $1.50 in change. And so please go abuse that resource and tell him I said hi. But while I was down, is one of the things I would do is I would take videos of my friends and I would just watch them on loop until I could figure out. When do you know when you're ready? Lux, that's a really good question, and we are totally going to get to that one. So I watched things on loop until I could start seeing patterns. And so in video analysis, and so we're going to go to chapter 2 of this conversation, video analysis and why we do it. It's a key that you can watch the same fight over and over and over again until you can see the finite details of why somebody died or why somebody won. And this is a great thing, but also it teaches our brain pattern recognition. So there's a tool that I use within this entire thing. Why did they die? And what is the simplest reason for it? Not the most complex. We go through a knowledge arc, and everybody can probably attest to this knowledge arc, where you start gaining knowledge and you have this upward curve of like, I've got this, and you start seeing the more complex things, and you're like, well, if they just twisted their hand like 3 degrees, and then they like thought this thing really hard and everything else like that, and then like the old dukes are standing on the side and they're like, well, his flat snap sucks because his foot's back. Oh, well, that's a simple answer.
I feel very called out.
I mean, you should feel called out, husbands. Sorry, somebody just delivered me a cider.
I walk in, I bring her a cider, and I feel called out. What the hell?
Yeah.
Did I have my foot in the wrong place?
I mean, not.
I
Well,
mean,
yes, technically,
office.
yeah. You had your foot in the wrong place when I killed you. But going on to this is, so one of the things that we need to use in video analysis is teaching people to look for the simplest answer to the problem. We are not actually doing calculus. This is like simple math. And the sooner we learn to ID simple problems, is it a power generation problem? Is it a placement problem? Is it a timing problem? Is it in their feet? Is it in their hips? Is it in their shoulders? From there, we can make the answer more complicated. But without being able to see the simple things, basically the big fault, we can't actually make the correction, because otherwise we're treating symptoms, not a problem. And how we can see this in videos is go find 3 or 4 videos where you yourself die the same way, not where you're successful, where you die, and look for what is the biggest fault that is consistent through this plane. Why am I dying to this flat snap from these 5 different people? Why is this thrust getting through? Why is my horse not on the right bend? It's amazing, because if you sit there and watch your own fights and you watch your own failures without being attached to the outcome, because that's the big thing, and we're going to talk about the mental emotional side of breaking down your own video here in a second, is if you can watch without being attached to the outcome of that fight, you are going to start being able to develop an eye to see faults. And once you can see them in yourself, you will actually be able to see them in others. And the reason for this is we see in others what we most consistently work to fix. So we must remember that we will make our own bias too. When we start watching other people's fights, we'll make our own bias. Where's the first thing that I look? The feet. All the time. I can find fault with almost anybody's footwork. What have I worked on the hardest? My footwork. Because, oh boy, howdy, I used to march into fights like I was claiming this land for Spain and you couldn't take it from me. And so those are some of the things that you need to actually look for. So any questions on some of this, like This is a pretty big, broad concept that I went out there, and I work really well off questions, so please throw them at me.
There's been a couple comments, mainly about Occam's razor. The simplest solution is typically the right one. I made a comment about also looking at your kit. What's the most beaten part? And people saying my legs or the bruises.
Yeah. So, and actually that is actually a really good comment of looking at where your armor is the most beaten is a really good thing. Where on your shield edge are you blocking the most, and where is it clean? Where it's clean is probably where you're dying. Like, is that flat snap spot real clean? You're not blocking that. Oh, recommendation for female fighters, a low pain threshold. I am actually going to generalize this and get rid of gender out of it. There are a bunch of fighters with a low pain threshold. We actually lose a ton of new fighters because they have a lower pain threshold and they actually haven't trained their pain threshold right now. You want to know where people really get nasty is guys. Guys that like actually have a cry response or have a tear-based response are brutalized in our society. Like it's bad. And they're saying that there's gender biases on both ends of this. And so we need to be aware of those. And realistically, my response to that is armor yourself as befits your training. So if you're out there fighting with a bunch of really heavy-handed dudes, you need to be armoring to that. And if somebody tries to be like, well, you're wearing a lot of armor. Yeah, because I would like to be out here training. And right now, mentally and emotionally, and also physically, I'm responding to pain poorly. So I am working towards like retraining some of those responses. So you got to set yourself up for success. This is actually like literally the positive reinforcement clicker training thing that we talk about in like animal training really actually works on our brains. We want to seek positive reinforcement. We are pain averse. So double checking your padding, not having the ego that you need to fight in minimums, making sure that when you have something breaking that you are fixing it, and that you aren't falling to the idea that you got to be tough enough to survive in this sport. I have a full set of like late period neck down shoulder armor because almost for 3 years, if you hit me in the scar, and this scar, like you barely see it now, this scar starts all the way up at the point and goes into my armpit. If you hit me in that scar, I was done. Like there was so much trauma around that injury that if you touched that scar with a stick, I was like, and I'm out. Like I want nothing to do with fighting for the rest of the day. And so for a long time, I fought in a very late period harness to guard that spot because I needed to. Also, it really sucks getting hit in that scar. So I hope that answers the question. And I'll just say that like armor. Also, having padding, by the way, yoga pad is like the best thing ever for fighting. It is great for leg padding. It's really low. It's low pro, so you're not like, you don't feel bulky, and it absorbs a lot. It's also antimicrobial, so it doesn't smell as much. So I hope that that answered that question. What do you do to improve your footwork? We're gonna be getting to some of these a little bit later. I will actually bounce off this one though and say in your while you're watching your video, this is going to be a fun one. You need to take video of yourself on the Pel. You need to take video of yourself while you're training by yourself and see how lazy your footwork gets. We get real footwork lazy on the Pel, and that's where we should be hyper focusing on it, because what that translates incredibly hard to our footwork while we're under pressure. Because we will always revert to what we practice the most. And if we are training our footwork to be lazy, where you just like walk up to the Pel and you throw a couple shots, guess what? As soon as you have pressure, as soon as that little lizard brain is engaged, it goes to what is the quickest neuron to fire, which is lazy footwork. Walk into range, throw your first shot. And it's amazing to see happen. And so improving your footwork through video analysis really takes, when are you tired? What are you doing at the Pel? What are you doing when you're just running around with like a set of boffers, just gaking off and training with your friends, and there's very little pressure on you? Because that will be repeated the higher the pressure gets. And so how you improve your footwork from there is looking for, again, the biggest fault. Am I walking in heel first? Am I walking in loaded to go backwards? So am I automatically leaning backwards? So even though I'm walking forwards, does my body have a tilt backwards? That fighter is going to run out of the fight. Every time. You're going to Man, did we totally just get bombed? So yeah, we did. I just removed him. What happened? Sorry, dealing with this real quick. Spam. I love reporting these guys so they actually kill them. So on that, now that we got bombed, woohoo! We have made a real Zoom chat. We hit enough that they bombed us. So go us. So when looking at footwork and video, so we're actually gonna like stick on this for a minute. If you are walking in as a fighter, you should be walking in roughly 60-40 on your feet so you can go forward and backwards and stay relatively loose. So one of the things that I look for when doing video analysis is I look, is the fighter leaning forward? Is the fighter leaning backwards? And I just did that reversed, sorry. So because where you are leaning denotes how you're going. The reason why for this is our lovely little head weighs between six pounds, very small fighter, and 10 pounds, relatively large fighter, and then we add a helmet on it. Guess what? We are literally making a weight pendulum. And so where that is leaning, your body is going to go because we have the lizard brain that says protect the neck. And so it's a huge thing. Like there's all the stacked information and all the psychoanalyzation behind it that you want. It's, are you leaning a specific direction? You're going to go that direction likely. And so while you're doing video analysis, how you improve your footwork is by looking at where your face is leading you, and can your feet follow, or can your feet lead you, or are your feet following your head? And that's like that's my first big thing that I look at. Any other questions there? Oh, the best view and angle to record from. I just saw that one. Sorry, I'm totally Thorin. I'm jumping all over it. I'm just trying to keep it. All right. Best video and view to angle for any and all. Depends on like what you're looking at too. So if you're looking at footwork, of course you want to be a higher angle down because you're going to be able to easily see where the footfalls are going. You're going to see how far spread you are. So one of the things that I used to do on Pell work is I grabbed a ladder and I got a like one of those little clippy phone holders, and I pointed it down at me so I could see almost that top-down view for a little while, because I was stepping really narrow, and I needed to like actually see myself do it and what was causing me to do it. When I'm looking at body mechanics and how much I'm throwing my shoulders, I almost want that upward angle, so I can see how I'm moving into the fight. I can see my carriage into the fight. But really a pretty neutral like right on is going to give you a ton of information. Sometimes it's really hard to see how narrow your feet are. So if you're really working on footwork, I would say a higher angle to give yourself the option of being able to see your feet. So I hope that's there. So bouncing off footwork, body mechanics. Body mechanics are like one of our biggest failings, how we generate power. How do we see these faults in videos? How we see them in videos is the fighter throwing their body into a shot? Like, and I mean like literally throwing their body. If you see somebody doing this every time they throw, well, guess what they're not doing? They're not using any loading. They're hitting somebody with their body weight, or at least attempting to. But also that's going to stutter step their footwork. That's going to make it so they have no recovery. They're going to fall in and out of a fight. It's a really big thing. As soon as you start seeing somebody's body jerking forward or backward in a fight, that is a very big key that they don't actually generate through their core. And so that's the first thing that I would start with that person. Too tight is another thing. We all know what it looks like. If you look at a nervous person in a crowd, we understand what that looks like. You can apply that to watching video. If a person looks really tight, bear down with all their stuff, they have to loosen their body before they can throw. They can't generate power without a release or a breath or something else like that. So they're going to automatically be behind time. Again, really, like once you practice looking for it, you can see it really easily. Also, one of the other weird tricks to do while you're learning how to do this, do it with buddies. Do it as a group so you all can say, hey, I'm seeing this in the video. Is this what you all are seeing? And they'll either be like, nah, or, oh, heck yeah, and see it. So like when you're looking for tense, like people being tense in a video, find a video like that and have a couple other people look and see, does this fighter look tense to you versus does this fighter look relaxed? And there's a difference between loaded and tensed. Loaded is almost always very relaxed. That person can flow and move. Tense is like, I only have the flat snap now. And you'll learn to see it really, really quickly. The best part of this is video analysis is great for when you're actually on the field looking at your opponent. And you're like, well, your shield is missing all this, so you can't block the flat snap and you're very tense. Okay, we got this. Overly compensate for my range height by jumping. We can totally talk about that later too. So one of the other common things we see in videos is bad recovery. Just to sound like Duke Sean from Artemisia, recovery is king. We cannot generate the next round of power if we leave our stick out here. None of us, can't say none of us, very few of us are big enough and strong enough to do that. And the ones that are big enough and strong enough to do that aren't going to have an elbow by the time they're 5 years in. Because this mechanic does not allow your elbow to actually unlock and remove. It just rips tendons right out. And so the next thing that we look for is recovery. Is the person either bringing their sword back to neutral and to a place of power, or are they stepping to the stick to get it back home? As home is basically a neutral spot within the circle of power. And so this is actually really easy to see in a video. And again, takes practice, but you'll see, especially in younger fighters and in very forward-handed fighters, they will throw the first shot and they leave it out there and then they turn it over. And half the time they leave their hand closed. So they throw the first shot, they leave their hand closed and they turn it over, and guess what? It's flat as hell. So one of the things that we look for is that hand traveling back to a place where they can deliver a good blow? And this is just a timing grade. Go watch a ton of videos and watch for your own failings on this. It is easier to see in a fighter that falls forward into a fight than a fighter that falls backwards. Because fighters that fall backwards tend to recover their stick better because literally the body forces it. Because they take the step back and it literally yanks their body back into place to throw another shot. Fighters that fall forward tend to then fall forward into the next shot.
Okay.
So is there anything else that you guys would like? Circle of power. Yes, I can totally speak to that. But is there anything else you guys want, like specifically about video?
There was a comment specifically about video. Timbrien was asking about, is it useful to watch videos of groups or melees?
If you're looking for tactics, yes. If you're looking for mechanics, not really. So we watch war video for tactics and like group dynamics. And so my war unit and I actually geek out on a big TV about that if we can get overhead footage of like, why did we make this decision versus like, and how did they respond to this decision? War video is definitely different than singles video. Singles video, you're going to be looking for very specifics, like where was my failing? Where can I make improvement? Or where was the individual's failing and where can they make improvement? Versus like war video or melee video, you're not really going to see a lot of things to improve on. You can see some pike work stuff where you're like that, how you're throwing that, you're shoveling your pike. Which basically means that they do this motion and they bring it in, it kicks the tip of the pike up at the end of the shot versus smooth motion like shooting pool cue. But overall, that's more a tactical a tactical use, and it's amazing, and I love it, and we totally do it. But it's going to give your war unit feedback, or it's going to give your fighting unit a lot more feedback of like, oh, hey, we're busting apart. Every time we get this pressure, this is our fault. Every time we're trying to do a flanking maneuver, this is who's running behind. So how do we need to change the dynamic of the unit to have everybody successful, or to be successful in what we are trying to do? Does that make sense? All right. And at least that's been the way for me. If somebody can do mechanics, well, in a war scenario, I want to meet them and I want to geek out with them, because I'm going to be impressed.
Fergus was asking if there's time to do a quick demo of video analysis.
Yeah. Does somebody have an easy to use video?
I've got one primed already. I can send you.
Okay. Actually, would you be willing to run it, because my internet connection is being a little dumb right now?
I'll see what I can do.
And we can play with that. Why don't we play with that at the end? And so that way, in case it just totally fails, we can set up a secondary meeting if we want to, and we can prime some better videos for it if we want.
Yeah, works for me.
Fergus, literally any of mine. So with that, so I didn't see any other questions pop up about video analysis. I'll tell you, it's an amazing tool. Also, so is Google Docs. And again, I'm going to go right to a millennial thing. While you're doing video analysis, don't pick more than 3 things that you're getting nitpicky at yourself about. You're not going to retain them, and it's just going to go downhill from there. Mentally and emotionally, a lot of people don't deal with more than 3 things very well. They don't retain them. And so while you're doing video analysis, keep a running document going where you're like, hey, I see this here. So, and then like look for consistency, and that's what you should pick on. Also, your failings are just data points. When you're watching videos of yourself, we're going to talk about the mental and emotional part of doing this. Because we all want to be successful in what we do. And it really sucks watching yourself get blown away with a flat snap over and over and over again and being like, I should have just blocked that. Who cares? Already passed. That fight is gone. It is now a data point in your analysis of your own fighting. There is nothing you can do by chastising yourself over it. There is everything you can do by identifying what caused it and then going and working on it. And if you work on it without being attached to the outcome, we go into a state of what I call play. So we get to play around with trying to solve this problem. We get to play around with trying to succeed with new information. Because if we walk in with a plan, guess what? Duke so-and-so is going to blow up your plan. Ask me how I know. Lived with 2 of them, bored in the pandemic. There was no plan that survived contact with those 2 bored dukes. And so, but go in with play. And this is also going to be the same thing with recovery of injuries. So this is going to piggyback right off that. When you are recovering, you have to be willing to play to understand your new body. You have to be willing to play to understand new information. So take the pressure off yourself of being successful. We don't play with new information in a tournament. We play with new information at practice where we don't need to win. And who cares if we win or lose? Who cares if we don't put stick on anybody the entire night? The only person that cares is our little ego that screams in our ear, oh my God, you have to be one of the cool kids and put stick on, otherwise you don't belong. Guess what? That voice is fucking bullshit. Just go do it and go have fun doing it. Like Fergus can attest that there have been fighter practices where I didn't touch anybody with anything and I was still a giggly, happy, fun mess because all I did was manage to block that flat snap the entire time. That's all I cared about. My victory condition was don't die to that flat snap. I don't care who I'm fighting. After that, you can kick my ass. And so set yourself up for success when watching video, when going to practice after you've watched video, when trying to come back from an injury. Set yourself up for success. And if you're failing, it means that your bar for success is too high. Knock it back a level, readjust your goals, then get back after it. So with that, should we go to some of the other questions?
There was one last one regarding video. Doru, I'm going to butcher the names, asking about videos you recommend for beginners or novices. They're saying that we can look at videos of Dukes and higher level fighters, but they don't know what they're looking for.
Oh, fuck looking at new or at higher level fighters and trying to do this. Like, don't do that. Go find the noobs of noobdom. Like, if you're one of them, even better. Because you want to see, while you're learning how to do this, you want to set yourself up for success by finding people that are doing bigger mistakes. Trying to analyze a video of like Duke Havek and Hans like having their little chess match where the entire mistake is literally an inch isn't going to set yourself up for success learning. You want to look at your like mid-level unbelts, your newer fighters, and your newer fighters, you're going to quickly see some of the mistakes. Cool. Like, give yourself the foundation and then move to your mid-level unbelts, to your upper end unbelts, and your lower level knights. This is going to give you where you can start seeing why they were successful and why they failed in pretty spectacular fashion. Because I'm pretty sure at that level right there, we're all rolling like 20-sided dice, and some dice we're having a real good time and that dice is weighted in our favor, and then other times you get pwned. I have it on video. And so that is one of the things, is setting yourself up for success. You want to look at your audience, and you want to look at the video that you're working on. So if you're working with a bunch of new fighters that are learning how to do this, find mid-level and beginner fighters to watch do this. And remember, stay polite. All of us were new fighters at some point. Like, every one of us were new fighters and all made these mistakes. And so stay polite. Don't call them stupid, but they're going to give you the best opportunity to learn and develop your own eye. Now, I will call myself stupid all the time, but that's bad behavior. So I hope that helps, and I hope that will YouTube watch lower level fights, highly recommend. Yep. So one of the things also to pimp it out on Coach's Corner, we're actually doing a bunch of video analysis classes and breakdowns with unbelted fighters. I can see if I can find the link and drop it in here before we're done, but it's literally a bunch of the coaches going through with unbelted fighters and talking about the deficiencies we're seeing. And you can go through and replay those sections with basically that feedback where we're seeing things and we're like, hey, this is what you're doing and this is how it's happening and why it's happening. I highly suggest the first couple episodes were real technical about it. And then like in the middle episodes, we started having a little bit of fun, and then we got back to real technical. And so those are definitely where I would recommend like checking it out if you want the constant feedback that also is a bunch of high-end video analysts doing it and just geeking out on it with the unbelts there. Also, if you search Helga SCA, you will totally get a ton of my unbelt fights, all the way from before my injuries to before I was knighted. And there is some spectacular differences too. And I'm always happy to geek out on those videos with people. If you want to like really, if you want to like spend the time to do it, you are welcome to come cut your chops on like my I got owned videos, because there's some good ones out there, and I am happy to geek out with people and be a person that's never going to be offended. Like as you're doing stuff where you're just like, why the fuck did you do that? I'll be like, I would like to know why a 17-year-old self did that. That'd be great, because that sucked. So there's that. Any other questions about video analysis before we go off to just like geeking off for a little bit? Lux asked a really good question, like right out the gate, and it's one that I really want to go after. Is the when you know when you're ready to start fighting again mentally and physically. You don't. This is a huge lie that we send ourselves, and this is why we lose upper end athletes. We assume that we will know when we're ready, and then we are shocked when we are not. You have to know when you're brave enough to try. And you have to allow yourself the room to change rapidly. And you have to allow yourself the forgiveness to fail. Because we assume when we come back, if we are completely prepared and we're ready to start fighting again, we will walk in just as successful. This is where we lose fighters, because the idea that we are mentally and emotionally prepared to fight again, or be hit, or possibly be injured in the same manner that we were beforehand, is the worst thing we tell ourselves, because it doesn't allow us to fail. It doesn't allow us to openly talk about fear. It doesn't allow us to openly talk about, I am frustrated and I don't know what to do here. And so what I'll tell you is you mentally and physically, you physically prepare yourself as best you can. You physically prepare yourself in a way to not be re-injured the same way. If you were injured fighting, have somebody look at your mechanics before you go back out. Literally have your friends come over, do some pel work and be like, your wrap, the reason why your elbow hurts is you're kicking your elbow out at the end of your wrap. And that's twisting your elbow. That's the reason why. Let's change that mechanic and drill that mechanic before you go back out so you don't suffer the same injury. If it's an off the field injury, you may not actually be mentally ready for a while, but physically you can be. I was physically ready to fight long before I was mentally ready to fight. And physically I was out there, and mentally I was just losing my furry little mind for a while. And so I'll tell you, physically prepare, mentally give yourself a lot of grace, especially if you're coming back from a bad injury. And the bad injury, I'm going to be clear, counts as mental and emotional. When we get scared, we give ourselves no forgiveness. We assume that we bear down and that we just get over this fear magically. We, besides our thumbs and our forward-facing eyes, are almost prey animals. Like, we are this weird dichotomy of predator and prey animal and smarter than we should be. Also, while being dumber than a box of rocks some days. And our fear will override a lot of logic when it comes to what we're doing. Why did I fight in a full arm harness for 2 years after being out of surgery? Because I was afraid of being hit in that scar. I was afraid that I was going to re-injure and that I was going to be a failure in everybody's eyes. And I sold myself a big bucket of fuckery. And then so I had to wear more armor so I could be out there. I wasn't mentally prepared to get hit in that arm for almost 2 years until it accidentally happened. And then I was like, oh, well, fuck, I'm fine. It just took that one moment in time. There was a total accident for me to be fine again. And so give yourself the grace to be not okay and do it anyways. And give yourself the grace to talk to those that are around you about not being okay. And if they make fun of you, guess what? They aren't your people. Also, I will probably fly there and then punch them in the mouth and tell you that is the reason why they didn't come back to the field. Now go sit down. But give yourself the grace and give your friends the grace to be afraid and do it anyways. That's the most courage we have. When we're 16 and bulletproof, guess what? Getting on the field is nothing. When we're 30 and a high mileage Honda like I am, guess what? Getting on field occasionally is like, okay, put my helmet on and we're doing this thing. All right, we're good. But it takes that little bit of wind up. Just understand you may need that and be okay with it. And when you're not okay with it, I'll come hold your hand. I'll tell you, I'm okay with it, so let's go. So there you go. There's my weird little soapbox for the meeting.
And drink. A couple questions that actually kind of play into this with recovery. And Valentine asked earlier, do you ever handicap yourself when a shot is overly effective in tournament and practice is different? I feel like this kind of plays into when you're recovering and coming back in and handicapping some of the shots you used to use that you know work.
Oh yeah, I throw them right out the window. So when we're when we're coming back, we want to go back to what was successful. Or when we're changing our style, we have to give up what we were successful. And so this goes into a weird like soapbox for me. So we're gonna go with soapbox number 2. When we're being success is the biggest killer of growth. Biggest killer of growth, because we want to be successful. And so this is the reason why we see a lot of mid-range unbelts actually stall out, because they're not willing to give up the one shot that they're successful with at their practice, but all of a sudden they go and they swim in a different pool and they're getting smoked. It's because you have to give up the tool that you were successful with to actually learn again. And this goes with recovery, especially. You have to give up what was once successful. I will never be physically a monster strong again. I had to give that up. And so I had to learn how to power generate in a completely different way. And I'm a much better fighter to this day for it. My body thanks me also. I take much less ibuprofen. And so handicapping yourself, and in a tournament, I will handicap myself by not playing with new things. I'm going to go with what I know. I'm going to apply my knowledge. I'm going to murder that fool. and then I'm going to walk off the field, and then I will make notes to play with new things at practice later. And at practice, I will handicap myself by fighting with a sword that doesn't have a thrusty. I will handicap myself by not allowing myself to throw leg shots or wraps, because man, I could throw a wicked leg wrap, wicked fast leg wrap. You want to know how I need to make sure that I incorporate other things in my fight? Not allowed to throw a leg wrap. And so I'll throw a leg, like you just unconsciously throw it. I'll be like, nope, that wasn't good. I need you to not take that. And they're just like, how? I'm like, yeah, sorry, but that I can't have you take that shot. And so that's how I handicap myself, so I get over whatever plateau I'm currently on. I hope that answered the question.
So next couple of questions, we can go one or the other. We've got Black Wolf asking, can you speak more on the circle of power? And Artemis is asking, how do you mentally prepare for a tournament?
So circle of power, we'll go with technical, and then we'll go with mental emotional. Circle of power. So we are a 3-plane, like we live in a 3D world, right? Almost everything we do moves in circles. It's not a straight line. Our body is not mechanically built to actually move in a straight line. Everything is joints, and we ambulate along, and our arms move in a circle and everything else like that. And so the circle of power that I talk about with fighting is how much we load and unload our body within a circle. And you can see, as you're doing video analysis, people like lift or drop. That is the circle this way. And then we deliver across this plane. This is the circle this way. And how we power generate is a circle. We are closing down into a circle before we deliver. And the circle also refers to, there's neutral spots. Home that we talk about, and a lot of people talk about power generation, a sword has to come back to home, or a sword has to come back to power. Coming back to power is where the sword feels like it almost has no weight, and your body is able to move in any direction. This is the neutral point of that circle of power. And so, because now I am settled and I can deliver anywhere, and you can then cheat out from there, because there's always cheats. There's always cheats to every rule in fighting, just so you know. But that circle of power is what when I refer to that, as I'm talking about, where is my stick neutral? And every stick is a little bit different because the weight's a little different. If you change your armor, it's also going to change it. But like most of the time, if I get right here, my stick feels like it's got no weight and can just go and be delivered. And I work to get myself back to that spot. So if I'm way out here, instead of recovering back, I'll just step to it. So I just changed where that circle of power is. And so I am not explaining this as well as I should, because I am still developing the language around this, because I was sitting on the couch and all of a sudden I was like, oh, light bulb. And so it's something that I'm just referring to and still developing the language around, but it's that neutral spot where your body can deliver in any direction, where your sword can deliver on any plane. And you will develop your own generation of it through your fight.
So that will go into, from there, we've got Artemis asking, how do you mentally prepare for a tournament?
Really terribly, at least in my at least in my book. So how you mentally prepare for a tournament is, there's a little bit of ritual, and it all depends on like how you were raised, or how you kind of see the world. Like some people need a really closed down, they want no input, they need to focus, and they need to look at their opponent, and they need to understand what they're about to do to their opponent. How I mentally prepare for a tournament is, I was a butcher for years. And so we're going to go with, I shut this down for years, and then I fought like crap in tournament, because like it's friends, not food. And so like, I shouldn't look at my friends like livestock. I will tell you, when Leon happens, every single one of you is something that I'm putting onto a butcher's block, because I have that mentality. but also I had the mentality that literally up until the point I was killing that thing, it was my friend and it had a name. And I might sound like a little bit of a sociopath here, but there's the truth of it. And in this last tournament, this happened every time I walked out there. Like every time, even with my husband. He stood across me, he saluted me and said, "I loved you." And what I whispered is, "You're gonna die now." Like, that's how that went. I saluted him, told him I loved him, and it was like dead body. Like, and but everybody learns a different thing, because some people are capable of that detachment and some people aren't. And so some people, it's making happy bodies and it's Mario Kart. And I've just beaten you at Mario Kart. And I'm very competitive at Mario Kart. And so I'm going to smash you at Mario Kart because I'm going to pass a rainbow bridge and you're not. And some people need that mindset, understanding that it's a neutral reset, that we're not actually going after that. And then some people go all the way to the other end, kind of like myself and Thorfinn. Thorfinn fights with actual like hate, which is super interesting to talk to him about.
Heavy stuff, but really cool.
But for me, like, I need you to not be there anymore. Like, I am no longer attached to the name. I'm no longer attached to the heraldry. I'm no longer attached to the conversation we're going to have over beer later. Because I know that we are. But at that moment in time, I need you to get off my field.
How you doing? All right.
Hey, Zoom. And so what I will say that has been really good for me is I played with ritual before the tournament, because everybody's going to tell you about how they win a tournament or how they prep themselves for a tournament. I'm going to say, create your own ritual, try it out. You don't have to steal it from anybody else. You don't have to be anybody else. You could need to put on a clown red squeaky nose before a tournament, and that's what gets you in the mindset. I won't care. I'm going to respect it. But play with your own way of ritual, because we do actually need to be in a little bit of a mindset. We do need to be prepared to fight in a tournament and understand that tournament is different than practice. Tournament is different than training. Tournament is different than drill work. And you need to develop those mindsets and then install the light switch. We're just like, tournament time, go time. We're not fucking around. I'm not trying new shots. I'm not doing these other things. That dude's dead. Cool, great. Now I can turn on the other switch and go back to training. And this is, you play and develop these things by trying out what rituals work for you, because humans are programmable. We are literally just walking, talking machines that like error codes a lot. And so play with the programming you need to get there. Then repeat the programming. And how we do this at practice is by saying, I want tournament fights and I need a tournament mindset. So I'm going to walk away and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to pretend this is tournament and we're going to have a couple set of tournament fights. And then we're going to go back to practice. And you teach yourself how to install those buttons and how to create those neural pathways that lead you to success. So there we go.
So next question we've got here is from Siri, asking about how do you generate power mid-step?
This is called frame weight transfer. So how we generate power mid-step is actually understanding the power comes from the end of the step. We very rarely deliver full power in the middle of a step unless you are very strong in the upper body. We deliver power by our foot hitting the ground right before our shot lands, which allows us to push and deliver the rest of that snap. So you can start a shot mid-step, but finishing a shot, actually what ends up happening is physics is not our friend, is we deliver as much force as we take out, because now our shot can actually shove us backwards a little bit and it takes some off of it. And so this is a timing thing where you can start that shot there, or you are strong enough to do it. Is actually that there is the cheat code with this. Like, I'm really damn sure Seto can hit me hard enough mid-step, but he's also 6'2", 6'3", something like that. He's giant. 6'4". Okay, that dude is almost 12 inches taller than I am. But like, I'm real short. Like, I need my foot there so I can push and deliver that last little bit of step. I don't want to surrender the power of having a mid-step shot happen. And so there is cheat codes. The bigger you get in our sport, the bigger you are, the more cheat codes you can apply. The smaller you are, the fewer you get. Well, I am 5'5", fuck around and find out, which means I get very few cheat codes. So Um, I hope that helps, but that's one of those ones where I would try actually developing the end of your shot to land when your foot lands, and you will probably find a giant power difference. You're also going to find a giant difference in how you can load to the next shot.
You saying about being shorter and the fuck around and find out kind of plays into series next one of saying they're not very aggressive in general, so any advice on that front would be helpful for going through assertive and techniques.
Can you repeat that question actually?
Ciro's asking, saying that they're not very aggressive. So getting into a fight, being smaller, asking for advice in that regard.
So this is actually just, so some people are aggressive, some people are not aggressive. I happen to fall into the aggressive scale, but confidence is key. And so confidence actually comes from understanding what you're applying to the situation, and or manipulating the situation so you can be confident. So if you're like in a training environment, what will likely give people more, I don't want to speak directly to you because we haven't had a lot of like, I don't want to make assumptions in this process. So if I have a lower confidence fighter that I'm working with, I try to create an environment where they can be confident. So, okay, what are they confident in? Are they confident in they can throw a real nice flat snap, or they're working on their footwork. And so I will set them up to build confidence so they get the feedback loop of all of a sudden their brain is getting the cookie. And so it builds and maintains that confidence in the fighter so they can then apply it to situations where they don't possibly know the other fight. When they're like, I'm very confident in the fact that I can throw a flat snap and that I've got enough footwork to get away from this person or get into this fight, or because I'm small, I've got the confidence that I know what likely their first shot is. Because guess what? Being short is great. You want to know what everybody wants to hit me with? A flat snap. Like right out the gate. And so we mix the idea of aggression and confidence are actually two different things. Confidence leads to ability to access aggression, and or aggression comes out of fear or a fear response. It's a very I could do a whole class on this, actually. I could do a whole giant class on this. But going back specifically to your question, is confidence comes from setting yourself up into a situation where you can reinforce your confidence. So work with people that you trust to help build that. And then take that little chunk where you like, if you need to, you run over, you earn your confidence chips, and then you spend them in a new situation. And you can come back and you earn some more confidence chips, and then you spend them in a new situation. And soon you'll find that you don't let go of those confidence chips, going back and forth between a very known quantity and an absolutely new quantity. And this is kind of like that emotional cheat code of, I feel very safe here, but I don't feel safe there. So I'm going to go feel real safe. And then I'm going to go like explore outside the box. Now I'm going back to the safe zone. So that's my take on that one.
Next question we've got is from Valentine. Have you ever changed weapon systems due to injury, i.e. great weapons or non-dominant hand? Any pitfalls or learning opportunities?
Oh yeah, tons of learning opportunities, tons of pitfalls. And yes, I've changed my weapon styles a ton. So I fought left-handed. I have fought with multiple shield styles. I have fought with great weapons. I have for a while I was fighting with like an upside down great sword in my left hand because I didn't have enough strength to hold that shoulder up. So I just kind of like I just parked it there, and I was like, basically this is single sword, but I don't get legged. And so the only pitfall that I can really see there is our own ego for not being willing to learn and be hit again. Because pain is a really good teacher, and we don't like going back to revisit that teacher. Like, why would we purposely want to go revisit the thing that sucked? And so our pitfalls are actually ourselves. There is almost what I would say very little pitfall to the fighter itself once they're over ego, because when you learn a new style and when you start playing with a new style, you start seeing how you can capitalize on that style when other people are fighting it. Why do I fight lefties pretty damn decently? I fought left-handed for almost 2 years, and then so a lefty severed my triceps tendon off with my elbow cup. I still have that elbow cup as a souvenir. And so I had a really bad fear response with lefties for a long time. And so I almost exclusively fought lefties until I was over it, because I believe in doing terrible things to myself mentally and emotionally. But because I was willing to go play with new styles, now when I see that style on field, so if I'm in a tournament, I don't care if you're a two-stick fighter, I don't care if you're a glaive fighter, I don't care if you're left-handed, because I've had enough time and grade fighting with that style that when I see it, I'm like, aha, you are not magic. And I also know that normal sword and board tactics aren't going to work against you. And also, if there's a weird tournament style, I can just pick up another weapon and I'm comfortable with it. I may not be really good with it, because believe me, I suck as a glaive fighter. I have an amazingly fun time, but I suck as a glaive fighter. Holy crap. Like, just don't let this be on video. Suck as a glaive fighter, but I'm not afraid to go pick up that weapon in a tournament and not feel like I'm competent enough to give a threat. And so I will definitely say, pick up other styles, have fun with other styles, play with them, and like, just understand the only thing that's going to get in your way is your ego. So when you get your ass kicked, laugh at yourself and go right back to learning. It's data points. Go apply yourself, ask your teachers, how can I improve? Like, if I'm ever hanging out with Thorin, I'm asking him, how do I not suck with this stick? Like, come here, come teach me how to do this. And that will grow you as a fighter so quickly.
Awesome. I will say that you won Coronet against a lefty, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. I love that video. Talk about a video I've watched.
Some revengeance for a pin and a plate in my elbow there.
How about just another minute or two for questions, and then we'll try looking at the real-time video. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Great, thank you.
So was there any other questions on here?
Well, funny enough, Timbrien's next question was,
I was just going to unmute myself instead of typing it. I'm sorry. Can you address visualization, whether you use it or not, and why?
Oh yeah, totally. That's a great question. Oh my God. I use a ton of visualization. And so visualization is kind of like the ability to see an image in your mind and play with it. And some people can see it in 2D, some people can see it in 3D, and there's some very weird people that can't do it at all. And I can't even say very weird people. It's actually like 40% of our population does not actually have the ability to visualize an object in their head. They see the word or an associated, like, really, really weird image. You can actually teach yourself how to visualize, and using video analysis actually helps you gain some of the data points to get your brain to do it. And so I use visualization as a way to analyze my fights between sets. But also I've spent a lot of time being very body aware and trying to apply that to how I visualize, where I can tell I misstepped. And so I will sit there and I will visualize, I misstepped here, I still caught this shot, but had I been here, I would have been able to deliver a response. And I will visualize the correction. And I will play it through a couple times, and then I will go try the correction. But this allows my brain to actually take the idea just out of a little, all the neurons firing and making pretty colors behind my eyes, to an actual physical motion. And so how I use visualization is to pre-build the actions that I'm making within the fight. How I also use visualization is not surrendering the fight to my opponent. You walk out there and you imagine yourself dying, you're going to let yourself die. So I visualize before the fight, not dying. I don't have to visualize winning, but I get rid of the thought in my head that this person is going to flat snap me. This person is going to do this. If I'm worried about that person's flat snap, I will visualize this person is going to throw a flat snap. Likely, if I do this stimulus, this is how I'm going to block it. This is how I'm going to address it. Okay, there's that. I'm not going to pre-program the fight, but I am going to think about, this is a threat. This is how you deal with the threat. I will not visualize that person hitting me with a flat snap, because otherwise they are way more likely to hit me with a flat snap, because I'm just going to surrender the fight to them. So I hope that answered your question, Quinn.
Next question is actually from Timbrien, asking how it felt to win Coronet.
Still surreal as fuck. I don't know if anybody watched those finals. I actually threw my gauntlets down and said fuck and then walked out of the circle and then walked back in because I visualized that entire finals as very, very neutral. Every fight up to that point, I was getting a little bit more amped. And not amped in like I took caffeine and I feel jittery. It was very much so that amped of I was cold. Like one of my friends walked over and, how are you doing? And I turned around and looked at her and she went, oh, it's one of those days. And she used to work on the line with me butchering. And she was like, see you later. I brought you water. See you at the end of finals. And she knew before I did. And when I walked into finals and ended up winning, it was just super surreal. Like all I could think about was hug my opponent and tell him thank you so much for these amazing clean fights and just a riotous good time, and hug my consort and hug his consort and fuck their spreadsheets. But it was surreal. And it still is very surreal. It doesn't feel real at this moment in time because I never imagined myself doing it. I never imagined being royalty by my own hand. And so now I am, and I have no idea what to do with it besides party on. And we're going to have fun and go from there. Hey, my page is here now. Yeah, party on Wayne. We have said that a lot.
Our next question's from Drustic. They're asking, can you describe any possible advantages of being an under tall fighter against the 5'17" giants? They are a 5'4".
We have so many advantages and it's delightful. Oh my God, there's much less of us to hit. So you have a big giant dude in front of you. There is so much real estate to hit. It is like options galore. But we can fight with lighter gear. We can fight. We actually tend to have better cardio because there's less of us to move around. And oh my God, there was a really bad dog fart. I'm so sorry. Go up. Oh God. This is on video for the rest of my life. But we have so much less to actually target. We also have an easier demand for what they're going to throw at because we're smaller. So when people look down at us, there is going to be lizard brain responses about what they want to hit. Like the top of our head looks very open. The flat snap tends to look very open. It looks like it's easier to reach to our back when it's not, because we can cut their circle way quicker. And so the advantage of being a smaller fighter is also we tend to have better longevity overall because we have to learn mechanics earlier. To develop a good and telling blow, we have to develop better mechanics earlier on in our fighting career. So where our fighting career tends to be slower at the start, as soon as things start clicking, there tends to be less of the mid-range unbelt stall out. There tends to be less of the lags when learning because we've put the time and grade in to get to the point where we're just like, awesome, this tool doesn't work anymore. Yeet it. But specifically when dealing with other opponents is we get to demand what they throw more than they get to demand what we throw, because we have very specific targets that we can set up and be like, please come take this nice target. You want this one so bad. And they will throw at it like that. And so that is one thing that as a smaller fighter, and we can geek out on this. This is probably another real long phone call where I need to stand up and everything else like that is there is parts that you can demand in the fight that they will never get to because they're used to having strength and height, which means they throw down. And if you know that one thing, they will throw down off their shoulder at you, you can control that fight from the get-go. Because they're always going to have range on you. So cool. Tell them where they're going to try to hit you first and then walk into their range. And now they have to really either backpedal out of that fight or they have to try to regain control somehow. We get it for free. We just don't get the first point of initiative. And yes, smaller fighters tend to be much better counterpunchers because we're taught, and we have to be.
That actually ends up the questions. And Timbrien was asking if you wanted to do a quick video review while we have the call going.
I would love to if people would like that. Also, Astrid, I want to say that stuck in the danger zone is because you don't know your range yet. So start messing with your range instead of trying to survive the fight. Start trying to command the fight and get to the point where you can hit them. They're going to have to reset the fight constantly. Like they will have to reset the fight to try to get there, versus you'll just be able to like walk in. And it's a really cool thing. It's very frustrating to learn how to do, and I'm happy to talk to you off air about it because I've definitely killed a helmet learning how to do that. But it's a lot of fun. Oh,
all right.
Can I answer
Actually,
Gwen's question before we do video review? Can I answer Gwen's question?
yeah, actually, Fergus, apparently I missed one as well because Fergus was asking about managing the fear of actually going into the fight and getting in range.
If you're afraid of being hit, you need to check your armor.
Oh, I'm talking about the door that she.
Like that's actually a thing. Like if you're afraid of being hit, you're not safe in your armor, and you might need to check your armor so you can actually continue to work on that. And then you just need to drill. You need to get hit.
That wasn't.
Until
I don't think
you
it was
need to
that.
eat.
I think the question was about just approaching tournaments itself. It was asked by somebody, but their name was iPad 2. So I don't know who that is.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the fear of entering a tournament, like getting into a tournament?
I think so. I scrolled so fast that I don't see it.
Well, I'll answer that one real quick too. I'm from the West. It is expected that we fight in tournaments. So I realize that I can't speak to other kingdoms because like some kingdoms have letters of intent, and it's a very big cultural thing to be invited into the list. And so there's a lot of pressure put on, like you got to be good enough to be in a list. I come from a culture, and I realize that this is my SCA cultural bias, and so I need to own that. Is the only way you get used to being in a list, and the only way you get over being afraid of being in a list, is by being in a list. Is enter whatever, like go enter baronial championships, go enter your crown, go enter local things, and just get the experience of being there and being present and saluting your consort and knowing that the eyes are on you. And you may go out in 2, or you may go out in 1 if it's single elimination, and just have a ball doing it. Just forgive yourself and just be like, you want to know what my victory condition was today? That I signed up in the list. And eventually your next victory condition was, I'm going to try to kill my first round fight. Or I'm going to try to make sure that like my deaths are the best deaths today. And pick simple things, but just go do it. That's a time and grade thing, at least in my book, but that's also, that is speaking very Western culturally. And I need to understand and put the caveat on that I understand that's also my bias. And then Gwen asked, how do you discard your ego when peers and trainers reinforce the idea you need to win? Find better peers and trainers. That generation is dying off. Like 100% that generation is dying off, and that generation is dying off for a reason. And that generation stalled out the SCA because we stopped learning how to learn. Find the teachers that feed you. Find the teachers that will stand up for you when you're taking the time to learn something. You can't win practice. Nobody can win practice. Who cares who is king of practice? That is an ego-based bullshit thing. If you want to put bodies on the ground, you have to be willing to put the time where you're the body on the ground. We are all playing Mario Kart, fall off the bridge a million times until you know the perfect path on it. And who cares? And if your peers are only pushing you to win, unless you feed off that, it's going to stall your growth patterns out because you will stop learning how to ask to learn. And we as teachers, and I'm going to speak every night here, we as teachers, and then even continuing to be students of the sport, need to understand we need to teach our students how to ask to learn. And when they want to put bodies on the ground, cool, we'll coach them how to put bodies on the ground. But when they want to learn, we need to set aside our own ego in their success. My student's success is continuing to learn and grow and love this sport. He can go to 100 practices and never win a fight. I'm going to be proud of him because he went to 100 practices. And until we embody that, we are going to continue to see our generation stagnate and get smaller and smaller and smaller, because we will forget to teach them how to do the thing they want to do. And that's to be successful down the road, not successful right fucking now. There we go.
Amen.
Sorry, that was definitely a very tall soapbox.
So we do have a couple more questions we could ask, or did we want to go into the video review?
So it looks like we're getting the wrap-up thing. I'm
Yeah.
happy. So if your question didn't get answered tonight, please feel free to message me. I'm happy to spend some time with you. We can video chat. I am happy to go over questions. I'm also happy to take the questions out of here. We can still get the questions in a text format, right? Zoom used to allow us to do that. I'm happy to take those questions and I'll post them, and I'll post my answers to them. And so I'm happy to give them the time, but also I don't want to hold all of you hostage all night long. So I'm standing on that soapbox. It's my new home. So video review. Thorin, let me see if I've got the internet capability right now to host the video. Hang on 1 second. If not, I'm happy to have you bring it up and go ahead and play it if you want.
Whichever is easier. I've just got one of my recent practice ones of me getting beaten up. So
okay, cool. Let's go ahead and have you pop it up there. I'll probably have you. So what I would like you to do is, so here's the tricks and video review. What we're gonna do is we're gonna play this video at full speed once through to the conclusion of the fight. Then we're gonna play it through halftime. And my challenge here is we can have chaos. So at this point in time, we were at chaos. Once we go through this video in half speed the first time, what I would like people to do is start volunteering what they're seeing. We should all try to be a little bit polite, but it's going to be a little bit of chaos, but this is also how we learn. And so I would like people to volunteer what they're seeing, and so we can start having those discussions, if everybody's cool with that. Also, if you need to bounce out, I will not take offense to this. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment to see if we can do this.
all right. So recent practice videos. I am the one in the black and blue. Everett is in the green and white. Buckler practice, because bucklers are amazing. And you tell me when you want me to start.
Oh, go ahead.
As you walk right through to distractions. Oh, that's okay. 21. 21. Great. So you only 23. So you only take 9 points of lightning damage.
It is coming through clear, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I also had left ball bearings at the bottom of the
Get to that.
stairs.
Going down the stairs, all of a sudden you hear this. Right as one of the statues. You only just now noticed it on my Trona. Its eyes burn bright white blue before you just see white. You dart forward to get out of the way and manage to shrug off.
I forgot how wicked fast your hands are.
And that's the end of fight one.
All right. So chaos time. Actually, go ahead and run that through on half speed, because there's actually there's something that both of you guys are doing. There's something that you're doing, and there's definitely something your opponent's doing, and so like that I would say are the simplest things. And so I'm super curious to see if people are seeing what I'm seeing.
Okay.
We'll say for that you just take 2 points of bludgeoning damage, but you are currently prone on the ground and your back hurts.
Where at this point did we see it?
Right for us to see him. You guys at this point would have been going down, so.
The shield that low, there is a reason for it in my mind.
May have just caught this. So okay, what are you doing?
Well, I'm on shoulder
her the lentils and ask her to shut the door behind us. So I guess now would be the moment I either see him or I don't.
I'd say timing wise, of him coming down to follow and the pen it takes.
Yeah, there we go.
So let's have a little bit of chaos, and if somebody needs him to back up in the video to the point where you're seeing things, what are you seeing? Somebody's got to start the chaos. Come on.
They're starting the fight in range without an implicit threat.
Ha! Mari
Stepping.
nails that one right out the gate. That is definitely the first thing that I saw. Anybody else?
Gwen says, where is the power generation?
On who?
Both of them. Watch them. They're all forearm coming into that. And I don't know what their power expectation is, but they're throwing all forearm in it. And when they're taking their steps, they're not using their body to power that through. They're just using the steps for mobility, not for power.
So if anybody can tell, Mari was my knight, by the way. I may have had a little bit of influence there, or she had a little influence on me there. All right, anybody else want to, anyone else want to crop in?
There's a few comments about the shield. So the reason my shield is where it is, because a couple folks are saying shield so low. When the way I fight with the buckler is my buckler in guard is guarding my lower quadrant, because my hand is fast enough that I can do sword blocks to head and counter punch out. And then if I go for a low shot, my buckler will come up and that becomes my upper quadrant guard, and then it goes back and forth there.
I swear I'm going to randomly start calling on people.
There's a couple about power generation, how it looks like we're shooting mostly arm.
So I'll
Can I
say
kind
that
of-
I'll pop in a bit. I wasn't sure about the kind of approach and retreating. Maybe it could be more dynamic, spinning out at angles, not quite so linear.
Solid.
I was going to ask if you can go back like 10, 15 seconds in the video. Yeah, just if you like play the last pass. Like one thing that I kind of noticed is aside from first thing was the stepping in range, like you both step in with guard down a whole bunch, which I think was brought up earlier, but also your bucklers are both like super close to your bodies. And so like you do have quick hands, but like if your buckler is off your body a little bit, like you get just a better angle on it. And I don't know if it's as the fight goes on or as practice goes on, but like it looks like they're just dropping kind of low and keeping tight to the body. So like tighter you are to the body, like less time you have to react to the shot, right? And like the quicker you actually have to be with your hands. So like your body could be in a little bit better of position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. Cone of defense. That's, yeah, there you go. Whoever typed that. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Playing off what Zach just said and what Mari just said, do you think your cone of so to describe it to everybody, the cone of defense is the further your shield is out away from you, is the bigger this cone is. So it makes it harder for them to hit you. And how I describe it is if their basket hilt can't see you, they can't hit you. Is the trick, because we fight with a straight stick. It does not bend around the thing unless it's a dead stick, and then they're probably not hitting you hard enough anyways. But how does the idea that they are both starting in range possibly affect the fact that they are fighting with a very collapsed shield? And is there an association there?
Yes.
I'll fully admit that sometimes I'll do that just because it's bait.
But why are you baiting somebody while you're in range?
Because I'm dumb.
All right, what was rule number like 5 that we went over? Don't call yourself dumb or stupid while I'm on air.
Let me rephrase that. My wisdom is my dump stat.
Do you think it's like you're comfortable with the person you're fighting, so you get away with that sometimes?
There's that. I think it's also my comfort level with fighting sword and buckler is probably a bit more, so I get a bit too lax with it sometimes.
Yeah, because like I definitely feel comfortable fighting sword and buckler until I get my ass schooled in sword and buckler. And then I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this thing. I don't even know why I pick it up. So that's why I asked, because I know that you and Everett fight a lot, right? So I just didn't know if maybe you're in a slightly smaller space. So maybe you've just become accustomed to starting a little closer, right? And like dropping down and kind of starting from this like agreeable position where you both know the fight really starts.
Yeah. Yeah, we're essentially in this space, we're essentially working with a Burka-sized fight arena.
Then you guys should go to opposite corners for a little bit, because otherwise this is possibly going to set you up for failure.
I have a maybe weird question. How tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
Okay, I thought maybe if you were tall, you were used to fighting people shorter than you. So, ooh.
I think the fight is also very two-dimensional in general, and it's from both opponents. And the problem with that is when you're stuck in a forward, back, forward, back, forward, back routine, it's simply a matter of the person who's more balanced and more patient is going to get the win. So when you're fighting a very two-dimensional fight, one of the crucial pieces of breaking that is you've got to do some lateral steps. You've got to move laterally to break that up. If your opponent's committed to a two-dimensional fight and you aren't, you then take control of the fight. And again, it could have been the space, although I find smaller spaces, I tend to step laterally a hell of a lot more because there's no place to go back to.
Can I ask a very basic question here? Torin, is the floor surface slick? It appears to be slick in the fight.
It's a bit slick. I'm wearing period fighting boots that don't have the best grip either.
So that is going to affect the entire fight because it affects your footwork, which affects your power generation, which affects everything. If you're on a slick surface and or slick shoes, I'd say your stance is a little too wide. You need to keep your feet more under you. I done a fair amount of HEMA stuff on wooden floors like that with leather soled shoes. And if you don't keep your feet under you, you wind up on your butt a lot. So, but it's going to affect your entire fight. So your feet aren't comfortable, your entire fight gets thrown off.
So Helga, I have a question.
Yes.
If we're talking about, okay, reviewing a video and you said 3 things, right? So do you kind of go into a video, like I'm watching myself and I'm like, okay, lots of stuff is coming up. I try to figure out like the top 3 learnings. And then do you look for like what worked as well? Kind of like, okay, that worked. These 3 didn't, move on to the next.
Yeah,
like how do you approach that? Okay, cool.
And so you have just given me the most beautiful segue. I could not have made this more perfect. So one of the things is we have all fallen in to the basic trap of video analysis. We're trying to give very specifics versus looking for generalized ideas of what has possibly occurred here. And so I'm going to point out Thorin, would you replay this video just from start to finish? Because I'm going to give you guys an idea to look for real quick. What fighter is fighting foot heavy and forward, and what fighter is fighting backwards and standing on their heels? Because there's a very classic example here. And so we can actually see this occur in real time. You can actually pause it right there. Can you back it up like 4 or 5 frames? Look at where everybody's at here. Oh, you skipped past the 1 frame. It was so perfect, but it's okay. Okay, so we've now stop framed a couple times in here, and you can see actually where people's weight is. So we talked about this in the beginning of this meeting of we look for where does the head lead people. If you're looking at this, who's going what direction here and how consistent is this? I'm going to make Seto answer this question.
Still
You
muted,
have to turn your
Seto.
mic on.
I was gonna say my mic doesn't work, but that doesn't work. Okay, so you can see that the one in the green definitely a lot of their foot's on their front foot now, but when they get retreated back, they're putting it all on their back foot. And then I think it's Thorfinn, is it in the blue? Thorin, sorry. Thorin is his head's going this way, but he's throwing a shot this way as well, and it's all going forward momentum, not like diagonal. Does that answer it all?
It does actually. So does anybody else see this? Because this happens actually pretty consistently in the fight. That Thorin is allowed to push this other fighter around because he's constantly going backwards, or he's constantly loaded backwards. And so here in this screenshot, we have him the fighter in green, very heavy on his front foot. But if you look, it's all loaded to push him backwards out of the fight. And this is very consistent through the entire video. And again, this is one video, so it's a snapshot of what we're seeing with these fighters. And I'd want to look at 3 to 5 videos to see if it's pretty consistent. But for this purpose, he is consistently weighted on his front foot to explode backwards out of range. Versus Thorin is weighted on his front foot to move forward into range. And you can actually see him here at this point in time. He's actually not in a terrible position because his head has not broken the plane of his knee yet, but it will as soon as with that shot finishing, guaranteed his head is going to be over the plane of his knee, which means the next step he's going to make is forward. It has to be. He has to follow his head or he's going to fall over. And so this is what I'm talking about when you're looking at the simplest things in a fight. You can take a snapshot like this and be like, one fighter is running backwards and one fighter is running forwards, and they are not loaded to do anything differently. And so go ahead and just play this forward just a little bit. We'll see this play out here in a moment. And again, even there with him throwing forward, fighter in the green, he's still heavy on that back foot to go backwards. And so this is what I would actually point out to this fighter. I'd say you are always loaded to go backwards, and this is actually limiting your ability to move laterally. Because if you're always loaded to go backwards, you have to make a secondary motion to make lateral motion. Or you're only relegated to go one way if you don't cross your feet. Otherwise, you have to cross your foot, and then you're all tangled up anyways. Don't cross your feet. Crossing your feet is bad. And so this is what I'm talking about when we're looking at the simplest things. Where do we do this? And how does this simple thing, and so we're going to hyper focus on this for a minute. How does this simple problem affect both these fighters? How does this change their fight?
It lets Thorin take command of the fight and decide the tempo and direction of where it's going.
Yeah. How does this limit Thorin?
He's committed to only forward.
Yep. So to go backwards, if this other person runs into him, they're just going to look like two bulls trying to decide who gets the cow.
Right.
How does this affect the green fighter?
He's out of his own range most of the time. He's throwing shots that can't possibly connect because he's withdrawing from them.
Stealing his own power.
Yep.
How would you correct this in either fighter? I totally want somebody new to answer this, and it's okay. There's no wrong answers. So also welcome to working with me. There are no wrong answers because you may see something that I do not. You may have different knowledge. What was that?
Watching the slick floor, they're taking wide steps, and I'm watching their feet kind of skate around. If they were taking smaller steps, more measured steps, it would be easier to control, I think, and step into the shot.
it would also keep them more balanced so they can
Yes.
have true lateral motion, right?
Absolutely.
Solid response there. What is another way we can correct this?
You're asking me?
Anybody out there, actually?
So because he's back waiting and he's getting out of dodge, which as I typed in, that's not the bad part, because he wants to maintain that little bit of extra range so they don't wind up in super close range, especially with bucklers. But he could do that transition with that ball change and come forward again unexpectedly. So he can go the back forward, and now he's all up in blue guy's face and able to throw those shots. But blue guy is chasing him so that he doesn't, because he's leaning forward the whole time, he can't make those changes rapidly. And green guy can actually lead that fight as a provocation. So he can say, okay, throw those. Okay, now I'm going to close that distance back in because you are so front weighted, you're not going to be able to retreat when I come in again.
Nope. I'm actually going to say that, so there's been no wrong answers. They're all actually really good answers. Jacob in chat just nailed it. They can't move through the hips. Because they're so heavy-footed, they are limiting their ability to generate power in only one or two directions. Zach, I see your hand up.
Fergus had his up first.
Oh, sorry, Fergus.
I'm just going to mute. Yeah, that's something I'm working with a lot of people right now too, is like has been brought up before. With the heavy weight on one or the other foot, they're not well balanced. So they've already made their choice on which direction they're moving, right? They have no other choice. What I teach people is try to get keep your shoulders and hips closer in line, which allows you to move in any direction because it frees up both of your feet. You're not locked into any one. And that's something I'm seeing is either, but one or the other fighter is either moving drastically forward or drastically back. They don't have any other option.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, there's my shield painting one.
With this terrain, would it be better to not be so heel heavy? But I know a lot of men, they carry their weight on their heels. And would it be better to be more mobile on the front part of the feet?
We typically look for 60-40 because 60-40 allows us to like basically adapt to any soil and or terrain. And so I would say if you're either too toe heavy or too heel heavy, this is a detriment in both directions. And so we want to really watch for this in our fights and in our fighters. Oh, by the way, that fight that you chose, Thorin, Sean schools the shit out of me. It's perfect. So Zach, you had yours up next, and then Carl.
Yeah, everyone had awesome suggestions. My thought was like, so if it's noticed in a practice situation, right, like we could actively try to set up a drill that they could work on there, right? So we notice that one fighter is on his heels and constantly retreating, and one fighter seems to be leaning forward too far and constantly advancing. So like we could just set up who's now leading and who's now who's now reacting to it for a couple passes. Because like we can talk about all these things a bunch, but if Everett in the green's natural reaction for Buckler is to just be on his heels, because you notice a couple times he also pulls his leg up, right? So like I think he just might not like getting hit in a Buckler fight, and he just doesn't seem like he's comfortable. So just telling him like push forward, man, like lean in, like do all these things may not help. But if we can give them a scenario where it's set up in such a way for him to do that, it may help to like transition him to be like, oh, like this, got ya. Also, like he may be like, fuck, man, Thorin kicks my ass every time we're here, so I'm on my heels, right? And if you give him a chance, we're like, no, you're leading. Thorin, you just block for the next 4 passes, right? He's the dance leader, he's leading it. You know, it might just start to click in his head and give him a little bit of a perspective to change.
I agree with that suggestion. And Carl, right before you answer, I'm going to jump in on this one. How we do this in our practice is by taking away the pain. So we have some heavy duty buffers that are built for us to fight with. So if we're going to drill this, we will drill it with heavy duty buffers. So we are removing the pain response. So we're removing the inability to get over our fear and just be like, it's padded sword. Nobody cares. And so we can drill for success. And so this is another tool to put in the toolbook of like, occasionally you need to break out a set of buffers so you can actually find the success and then apply a little bit of pain feedback. Carl, where's yours?
Hey there. I want to preface this that I'm not a shield fighter primarily, and generally great weapons. But watching that video, it was interesting to me that with the buckler, both were generally leading with their sword foot forward. Whereas I think if they were fighting with a shield, they would have the opposite stance. And I think beyond what foot is further forward is to see the tilt of their body and where their body is straight. I practiced kendo for years, so much was about keeping your torso pretty much vertical. And a thing to check yourself, and it might be good for fighters if they've got a trainer or somebody working with them to just say stop and like pick up one foot, your foot, forward foot or your back foot, and see where your body goes, to see where your stance is. Like, are you leading? Because if you lift your forward foot up and you start going forward, you are in an aggressive stance. Whereas if you pick up your forward foot and you don't move, then you're in this sort of backwards, ready to go backwards. So that might be an interesting thing for new fighters to check themselves every now and then, for somebody to say, hold, pick up your foot. Are you moving? In which direction? But again, not primarily a shield fighter, so.
That's super solid. We used to kick the pels. So throw a
Nice.
series of blows. Can I still pick up and do a snap kick? Cool, great.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually a really, really good suggestion, and I really love it. I'm going to steal that, by the way, with my students now. So thank you. All right, so you guys ready to watch me get my ass kicked? But I'm gonna take that answer as a yes, or that silence as a yes.
Oseto just gave the happy eyes of
Duke Sean takes me to school here, like to school.
All right, so let's start with bing.
Sean hates that I do this shit to him.
Any other quick one? Do you want to just keep going?
I mean, if you guys want to watch me get my ass beat for like 12 fights, that's what that is. I don't think I put stick on him.
I think you do at some point.
Maybe.
I'd like to see that one again. It happened pretty fast. It was a little jumpy, so I couldn't quite see.
Can you slow that down to halftime?
Done and done. Do-do-do.
Oh, if you kill the audio, it'll help the load, by the way. It's the slowest leg shot I think I've ever taken in my life. He hit me hard enough that I was like, no, nope, never mind, yes.
I hate those shots.
So do we want to watch a couple more, or do you want to jump in on like, why did I get smoked in the leg here?
More, please.
Cedar just wants to watch me get my ass kicked.
Oh, it's laggy. Might be because of the. I did slow it down to halftime, Siri, so that might be part of it. You're trying to hop and go up and over.
This is my short ship bunny hop. It's real dumb. Real dumb.
How long ago was this, Helga?
This was 2018. I was a brand new baby knight. This is actually, I think this is a couple months before we heard about the pandemic starting.
Yeah.
There might be an audio setting, I think, now for live streaming, by the way, that might help a little bit because you're even getting laggy on my side.
Okay, I might have lost something here. Hang on. I think my internet might just be getting laggy.
Oh no. So, okay. Well, while your internet is getting laggy, we can let it load for a second. So I would absolutely love, was the sun a factor for me at all? Yes. The answer is I'm constantly sunblind fighting. Because, well, I'm short, so I have to look up. And yes, he is totally controlling the fight and dictating the range 100%. Nice call on that one. So one of the things that we were seeing in the fights is the fact that he was controlling and dictating the range, which means he could hit me at will, is overall in this, that's probably the best call out while watching two knights fight. And at this point, brand new baby knight, tons of mental and emotional issues about being a knight, not making excuses, but man, you can see it in this fight. Is what would you call out just watching that? So like, what is the first correction that you would make or suggestion you would make?
So one of the things I want to ask about is something you used to do, but you don't do it anymore. At least not the videos I've seen, is when you were testing your range and setting up, you'll do your little sword spin, but when someone comes in to test the range, you would go from having your feet balanced to having your feet together, and then you'd reset into something else.
I try to get rid of that tell because I do it at the edge of their measure. It was like my little like danger radar was like, stand up real tall. Be tall, be as tall as them. And then like my brain would be like, but you're never going to be. And so I'd reset into my range, and 90% of fighters wouldn't take advantage of it because they wouldn't see that was like my brain just being like, oh, fuck. And so I've worked really hard on actually getting rid of that and being a threat at their range, not my range. Because again, I'm short, but you can fuck with people like feet away from being able to kill them. And so you'll actually see me do that same behavior, but almost 2 feet out in distance. Where like they'll walk in for like, and actually I think you see it in one of my finals fights, where like he takes a first step in and I get real tall and then I settle into the fight. And so I purposely took a behavior that is very hard to get rid of and just manipulated the range on it. So I don't have to worry about the behavior. It's just there, but now it's at my advantageous range.
So one of the things I notice in a fight where range is controlled by making your opponent back up. And I have found as a short fighter, also a lefty, whenever I caught myself backing up, I was dead. That doesn't mean I can't take a step back to maneuver, but if there's a pattern of backing up, it would usually, as a lefty, make it detrimental to me to get in range. And I know Sean is rather an expert at the range game and the subtleties of the range game. So one of the things I work on with myself and with students is to really understand how giving ground puts a tone on the fight that will take it out of your control, whether you intend it to or not.
Agreed. Also, giving ground is just a manipulation of range. So one of the things is if I'm doing it in my range versus doing it in his range, where this fight I'm clearly doing it in his range versus my range, that's him controlling the fight versus me manipulating the fight. And as a smaller fighter, we have to understand that better. Because I win more fights going backwards than I do forwards. Because if I can step back and get them to extend to me, they give me a free lane to hit them with. I just must do it at my range.
Exactly. And even though you're backing up, you're not giving ground. Very, very subtle thing. So if we look back on that other video with the green fighter who is always on his heels backing up, you can back up and keep forward momentum in the fight. So the minute the opponent falls into your backing up, you can switch gears and have control of the range. And it's a nuance. It's very, very unique and subtle. And the only way you can do that is with slow work and training range games. And it takes a lot to do that. And you have to, again, the video, the understanding the dynamics of the fight is so huge.
Agreed. So us knights can talk until
I know.
the sky goes dark and then relights again. Is there anybody else out there that would like to make a comment on what you saw? Because there's some very classic things that you can see that occurred in that first fight that led me to losing. Does anybody else see, like, you can pick the most obvious thing, it could be like the most off the wall idea, but this is how we develop an eye, is by starting to look at it and putting it out there. I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say, and I want to make space for that.
Can you play it again, please? Hi, I'm Ruskva from the East. I fight glaive, lefty. I'm also short. I'm 5'4". So I don't have that much of an eye for sword and board. But what I think I saw is that there was a hang time moment where Duchan put his sword pretty much right there and kind of like sized up, and there was nothing going on. And I feel like at that point, maybe you could have stepped back into the side or just away or out or somewhere. And then, because he was like, doop, boom, and then got you on the inner thigh. So that's the only thing that I could see from my point of view here. I've been fighting.
That's actually a really solid view on that. Is there was no lateral motion in this fight at all. So, like, solid. Anybody else?
Can I piggyback off that comment?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was a stellar comment. And if you notice before that, every time he moves, like when he lifts his shield, you kind of take a little step. When he moves his sword, like the range is constantly like you're staying at his range with him. Once he puts the pressure, he stops you. Right? So like he puts the pressure on the top sword and you stop kind of moving out, and then he comes in and then he can swing it down. So like if we back up, like you see, like he brings in his shield, you move a little. He moves, you move. Like you're reacting. But once he gets that pressure on, it stops and it gives him the chance to just kind of close in and go for a shot on it.
Agreed. So, pointing out something here so all of you guys can see this, because this is incredibly classic. How fucking wide are my feet? They are super narrow, while also being the longest stance I can get. How does this affect the fight?
You literally cannot move without losing balance, like side to side.
Yep. So I can't actually have any lateral motion.
Right. And it's going to stop the power generation too, because you're direct on with your hips. You have no swing.
Yeah. And you can see the longer my step gets, the more my hips get cocked forward, which means I cannot rotate. So solid on that one. Also, the other side effect of this is, where's my back foot pointed? Completely nowhere in the fight. I literally cannot do anything with that back foot without another motion. So this is actually giving you something that we commonly see in a lot of newer fighters, is they feel like they need to hunker down, and so they actually make their feet longer. They're like wide, like basically wider front to back for side to side. This stops their ability to power generate. It means they must create a second tier motion to get power or motion. And you can see this anytime I step. You see I like literally load through my body to try to get something, and then my feet like come off the ground, or like I like kind of hop skip back into what's doing this, which means I'm fighting with my shoulders. I'm not fighting through my feet at all. And so this is actually a really easy, like once you develop the eye for it, I don't want to say this really easy to see. Once you start seeing this behavior in people, you can start taking advantage of this. This is a person that cannot move laterally. This is a person that must make a motion to generate power, and they're going to fall one direction or the other, and I'm going to fall forward. You can see that every shot, my head breaks the plane of my knees to generate power, which means I'm falling into my shots. I'm falling into trying to control it. And so thus he gets to smoke me for free, because I am pretty much like hand painting a billboard to say, I am going to throw a flat snap. I am going to do this thing because I must make so much motion to get enough power to make it a valid shot. I love making fun of myself, actually. Man, I need to do this more often.
Fergus had to stand up.
And you're exactly right. A couple of things that I saw is one, when he paused your weapon by touching it, you had to, like you said, leave the fight with your weapon to generate power. He just stepped into it. So he completely manipulated that time frame and shortened his time while lengthening yours. So that's something I talk to people about all the time, is I tend to try to tell people not to let people play tap with their weapon, right? Like, you don't get to touch my toy. So, and that's something that a lot of people have a problem with, is they'll get out there and they'll do that thing where they're trying to fish for range. And as soon as you're doing that, your weapons are all out in front of you, and you have to release to come back to throw. And that's exactly what we saw there, is he reached out to touch, and as soon as you went to release to throw, he was already able to step forward and gain that time.
Yep. All right, so this is actually, we've now run the full 2 hours. Thorn, would you like to kill the share screen? Because otherwise I'll keep you hostage all night long talking. Like, and so one of the things
you say that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, Timberland's probably got to go to bed at some point in time. And so what I want to do is, I just want to say, before Timberland's going to wrap this up, I would like to say, please feel free. If I didn't answer your question, you can find me on Facebook under Ariah, A-R-I-A-H. A bunch of people on this chat know me. And so please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel free to send those questions in. I'm happy to spend time with it. The only way we make the society better is by continuing to be open books with each other and continuing to share our experiences. And if I can sit and geek out with you about fighting video and everything else like that, hell yes, I'm going to do that. Like, this is my geek. Like, I will geek it. Like, again, like Duke Sean, you put a quarter in me about video analysis, you're going to get $1.50 and change. And so we'll go from there. But if I didn't answer your question, or you would like to give me feedback about some teaching, both positive and negative, like please send me negative feedback so I can improve as a trainer for everybody else. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to spend that time, and I'm happy to give you space. So Timberland, the floor is yours.
Awesome. I just want to say, oh my God, like of course, I've been years not being able to fight. And the missing link was watching beginners on video. You know, I'm trying to watch these pros, and it's like, oh, they blinked, and so they knew not to try that. And it's like, this is not helping me. You know, like I didn't know how to soak anything through it, let alone like watching my own videos. So it was incredibly helpful, and you're very generous to have spent 2 hours with us. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I put like, you know, your full name in the chat so folks can find you on their own. But thank you everyone for showing up, and what a beautiful, vibrant, relevant set of questions and learning. It was really phenomenal. And thank you so much, Thorin, for being tech master and question, and just such a gracious impromptu co-host. I really appreciate you too. So I just say thank you very much. And yeah, nothing other than that. You're the best. Helga, do you have any last words?
Thank you for dragging my happy ass out of like pseudo retirement from being on Zoom so I could do this. Like, this was amazing. And I just want to say thank you all so much for my last soapbox of the evening. We'll see how many F-bombs I can drop in this process. I want to thank you guys so much for risking being students. It is the hardest thing to do, to come into a group that is full of people that have like whatever peerages and everything else like that. And we had a bunch of people reach and stretch this evening to speak to what they were seeing. And I would like to point out that they were on point every time. And so I would love to encourage that more. And if you're in a space where you feel that you're not being encouraged to do that, and I'm there, I will come join you, and I will encourage you as much as you need, because this is what continues to make us all better and makes us all grow as a society and a group that's going to continue to see more diversity and more fun and more laughter about what we do, and be the cool shit that we do. Like, we get to hit our friends with sticks for fun. Come on. This is amazing. I want to like spur this shit on. Timberland, thank you so much for hosting this. Thank you all for hanging out with me for 2 hours. This was really good for my soul. And so thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, loves. Have a good night.
One last thing before we go. Where will the recording be posted so we can share it around?
I will, that is a great question. I know where I posted this event, and all the places I shared it. I don't know at this moment. I know I recorded it. It's at my husband's like collegiate professor account somewhere. I'm going to get that from him, and then I'll find the link and share it then.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.